Evelyn moved quietly through her modest apartment, each step echoing softly against floorboards that had known decades of laughter, sorrow, and secrets. At 84, her movements were slow but dignified. Every gesture, from boiling the kettle to opening the curtains, was a small act of resilience shaped by years of ritual. Her living room was filled with tokens of a life long lived, porcelain figurines from her travels, a hand-knitted blanket draped over her favorite chair, and walls covered in framed photographs, each one holding a moment frozen in time. In the center was a particularly cherished photo. Evelyn, barely 22, in a pale blue dress on her wedding day, arm in arm with her late husband, Frank. She stared at their young faces, quietly amused by their innocence and wonder, remembering how her heart had fluttered with hope. With her cup of tea steaming in her hands, Evelyn settled into the sun-dappled window seat overlooking an old, tree-lined street. Outside, life carried on. Children hurried to school, a postman waved from his bicycle, and neighbors chatted on doorsteps. But for Evelyn, mornings belonged to memory. She closed her eyes, and the years peeled away. She was suddenly a little girl again, running barefoot through English meadows, mud caked on her legs and the promise of summer adventures ahead. She could almost hear her mother's voice calling, "Evie, don't go too far." Evelyn smiled, remembering the warmth of those simple days, a stark contrast from the storms she would later weather. Her mind drifted to darker times, the war years, when nights were pierced by sirens and dreams were interrupted by news of loved ones lost. She recalled clutching her sister's hand in the darkness, promising they'd stick together no matter what. Evelyn had survived on courage and the hope that normal life would return, never realizing just how much her world would change. A knock at the door pulled Evelyn from her reverie. She glanced at the clock, 10 a.m., time for her nurse, Lily, to visit. But before rising, she took a moment to whisper, "Good morning, Frank," to her husband's photo, as she always did. In that private ritual, she felt him close, as much a part of her day as the birdsong from the window or the aroma of her tea. As the door opened and Lily's cheerful voice filled the hall, Evelyn straightened her back. No matter how much age changed her body, her spirit remained defined by the memories she carried, each one a testament to a life brimming with love, loss, and quiet courage. Lily's cheerful voice echoed through Evelyn's small apartment, bringing with it an air of gentle energy. "Good morning, Evelyn. How are we feeling today?" she called, setting her medical bag on the table near the doorway. Evelyn offered a polite smile. "Oh, as well as an old lady can expect, dear. The knees aren't what they used to be, but I'm still here." She watched as Lily began her routine, checking vital signs and asking familiar questions in her brisk, efficient way. As Lily worked, her gaze drifted to a collection of photographs on the fireplace mantel. "You have such a beautiful family, Evelyn. Is that you in this wedding photo?" Evelyn's fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the frame. "Yes, that was Frank and me, many years ago. We were so young, he had just come home from the war." Her voice caught for a moment, memories rising like a tide. "He always said I had the brightest smile in the village. I never knew how much I'd miss it." Lily smiled kindly. "Do you ever tell your granddaughter these stories? I bet she'd love to hear them." Evelyn hesitated, her mind turning over the past. "No, not really. Helen is always so busy. University, her job, her friends. She visits, but I never want to burden her with old stories." Lily paused her work, seriousness in her eyes. "You should. Sometimes, the past is the best gift we can give." After Lily left, Evelyn sat in the quiet, sunlight slanting across her lap. She picked up an old letter from a box by her chair, Frank's first handwritten words to her, sent from a distant battlefield. She read them aloud, letting the words fill the empty room. As night fell, Evelyn promised herself that next time Helen visited, she would try to share a story, not just for herself, but for her granddaughter. Her life, filled with gladness and grief, deserved to be remembered. And maybe, she realized, her memories could help someone she loved find their own strength. 2 weeks passed before Evelyn's granddaughter, Helen, stopped by for a visit. The young woman burst through the door with a whirlwind of energy, her cheeks flushed from the cold and her bag full of university books. "Granny, I brought your favorite biscuits," Helen announced, dropping the bag on the kitchen table. Evelyn smiled warmly, her heart lightened by her granddaughter's presence. They settled in the living room, Helen curled up on the sofa with tea and biscuits while Evelyn sat in her usual chair by the window. For a while, their conversation was filled with ordinary things: university stories, work challenges, family updates. But as the afternoon sun painted golden stripes across the floor, Evelyn glanced at the box of old letters and photographs on the side table. Remembering her promise to herself, she hesitated, then drew Helen's attention. "Would you like to hear a story, Helen? About when I was your age?" Helen's eyes lit up with genuine curiosity. "Of course. I've always wondered about your life, Granny. Tell me everything." Evelyn reached for an old photo, the one of herself and her younger sister, standing amid war-torn streets with brave, uncertain smiles. She described the fear and hope of growing up during the Blitz, the nights in darkened shelters, and the unlikely friends made in the most uncertain times. She shared how she had met Frank at a community dance, both of them unsure what the future held but determined to carve out one together. Helen listened intently, her books forgotten, drawn into the tapestry of Evelyn's memories. As her grandmother spoke, Helen saw not just an elderly woman, but a courageous girl who had faced hardships and found hope. Their conversation ebbed and flowed from laughter to quiet reflection. When Evelyn finished, Helen hugged her tightly. "You're amazing, Granny. I never could have imagined everything you've lived through." That night, as Helen left, she promised to visit more often, and to write down Evelyn's stories so that one day, her own children would know them, too. Evelyn sat by the window, heart full, confident that the life she had lived would not fade into silence. Her memories, once burdensome, had become treasured gifts to the future. Over the following weeks, Helen's visits became more frequent. The two women created a new routine. Evelyn would select a memory, sometimes from a photograph or a letter, and share its story over tea. Each tale revealed a different facet of Evelyn's life: her childhood spent chasing fireflies, the hardships of rationing during the war, the joy of her wedding, and the heartache of saying goodbye to loved ones. One rainy afternoon, Helen arrived with a notebook and a pen. "I hope you don't mind, Granny," she said shyly, "but I want to start writing your stories down. I never want to forget them." Evelyn was deeply touched. "I would love that, darling. When I was young, I never imagined someone would care about these old memories. But now, I see how much they matter." That day, Evelyn shared the story of the night Frank proposed, how he'd folded a tiny paper crane and placed her engagement ring inside, a promise of hope after years of uncertainty. As Helen wrote, both women laughed and cried together, their bond deepening with each memory recorded. As the seasons changed, Evelyn began to see her past in a new light. Her struggles, once sources of pain, became reminders of her strength and resilience. She realized her memories were not weights to carry alone, but bridges to future generations. On her 85th birthday, Helen presented Evelyn with a beautifully bound book. Inside were pages filled with stories, photos, and handwritten notes, a living history of a woman's courage, love, loss, and survival. Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes as she hugged her granddaughter. "Thank you," she whispered. "Now, even when I am gone, a part of me will always stay with you." That night, as Evelyn sat by her favorite window, she looked out at the quiet street, shadows and lamplight drifting across the glass. She felt at peace. Her life, filled with memory and meaning, would be remembered. And in that remembrance, she would live on. Spring arrived softly that year, painting Evelyn's street in gentle hues of green and pink. Each morning, she watched from her window as the cherry trees blossomed, petals falling like memories onto the pavement. The world around her seemed new, alive with promise, yet carrying the familiar echoes of years gone by. Helen's project had become something beautiful, not only for Evelyn, but for their entire family. Helen had begun interviewing relatives, collecting stories, and forgotten photos. Cousins from distant towns sent anecdotes about Evelyn's childhood bravery or her famous lemon scones. Evelyn's surviving sister, Muriel, wrote letters recalling their unity during the air raids and the way Evelyn always knew how to cheer her up, even when hope seemed lost. One afternoon, Helen brought over the nearly finished book. She had titled it Legacy in Bloom, inspired by Evelyn's garden and spirit, and dedicated it to the women who came before us, and the women yet to be. As she read through the pages, Evelyn was stunned by the life she saw on paper, one marked by hardship but even more so by love, laughter, and quiet victories. That weekend, their family gathered in Evelyn's small flat for tea and celebration. 3 generations crowded the tiny kitchen, laughter spilling into the hallway as children played and adults reminisced. Helen presented the book to Evelyn in front of everyone, urging her grandmother to read her favorite passage aloud. Evelyn opened the book, her hands steady. She chose the story of the night her street was bombed, how she'd comforted frightened neighbors and refused to give in to despair. As she spoke, her voice wavered only with emotion. Her family listened in awed silence, recognizing not just the pain, but the immense courage in her words. Afterward, Evelyn passed the book to Helen. "Promise me something," she said quietly. "Keep these memories alive. When the time comes, share them with your children, and tell them to share the stories too. Let them know that love and courage run in their blood." Helen squeezed her hand. "I promise, Granny. Your story will never be forgotten." In the days that followed, Evelyn found unexpected purpose. Neighbors who learned of the book visited more often, eager to hear stories or simply sit beside her in the blooming garden. Evelyn began to feel that her life, once confined to memories and silent photographs, was now woven into the hearts of so many. As the weeks passed, Evelyn's health declined gently, like fading daylight at dusk. She was surrounded by family, never alone, never forgotten. On quiet evenings, she could hear the laughter of children in her home and feel the warmth of Helen's hand in hers. Evelyn understood, at last, that her greatest gift was not a single act or achievement, but the legacy she left through resilience, kindness, and the love she had given so freely. Her past, carefully preserved and shared, would continue to bloom, reaching ever forward, long after she was gone. And in that garden of remembrance, Evelyn's spirit would remain forever in flower. Summer brought sunshine and a gentle warmth that settled over Evelyn's home like a blessing. Despite her frailer body, her spirits remained bright. Each day was a new chance to see her family, share a kind word, or sit quietly in the garden Helen helped her tend. Blossoms, planted decades ago, bloomed in vivid colors that reminded everyone of the life Evelyn had carefully nurtured, leaf by leaf and heart by heart. In these precious days, friends and loved ones came to visit with greater frequency. Old neighbors arrived with baked goods and flowers, sharing laughter over childhood memories and stories of days when the world was simpler but hope still large. Each guest, young or old, found comfort in Evelyn's presence, her wisdom, and her gentle optimism. Helen remained by Evelyn's side, reading aloud from Legacy in Bloom, adding new notes and stories as they surfaced. Together, they would recall adventures and sorrows, courage and kindness, and the little quirks and habits that made life unique and beautiful. Other family members, inspired by Evelyn's openness, began writing their own experiences in blank pages at the end of the book, planting seeds for future generations. One quiet evening, as the golden hour cast soft light through the lace curtains, Evelyn held Helen's hand and gazed into her granddaughter's kind eyes. "Thank you for giving my life new meaning, Helen. You've turned my memories into hope for tomorrow." Helen replied with steady conviction, "You've taught me what strength truly is, Granny. Your stories will guide me, and one day, my children too." Not long after, Evelyn passed peacefully in her sleep, the scent of summer roses drifting through the open window, surrounded by the love of those whose lives she had touched. There was sadness, yes, but also deep gratitude for a life truly lived and a story deeply shared. At her memorial, family and friends read from Legacy in Bloom, remembering not just Evelyn's hardships and bravery, but her laughter, kindness, and unwavering love. In those words, she was alive again, her wisdom echoing in every heart, her spirit woven into the fabric of her family. Evelyn's home became a gathering place, a small garden always blooming with color, where her great-grandchildren would one day learn of her courage and feel the warmth she left behind. And so, her legacy continued, blossoming anew in each life she had lovingly tended, forever remembered.